Alright, so this video is a recording of finishing up the diagram of the mannequin building, the 3 steps to building a mannequin. I'm going to go through the full process for those of you guys who were here in class last week. I will walk through the whole thing, so if you need to just go to the part that we left off on, I will give you a timestamp in the assignment post for what to skip to, so that you don't have to do the whole thing. However, of course, doing the whole thing over again is a good review. It gives you good practice, especially if you feel like your first one didn't look too great. Do another one so that you get the process down and the proportions down. So what we're going to do first is split this paper into 3 sections. You don't have to use a ruler for this. Just as long as you have 3 sections to fill in. They don't have to be super even as long as they each have space for the mannequin drawing. Next, you're going to do a line up here. Again, does not have to be perfect. That is where your labels will go. And then down here, the same line. That is where the feet will rest, which I'll show you in a little bit. And now we're going to divide our paper up further. So we want to split this in half. What I'm going to do is rotate my paper this way. And to do halves, I like to use my hands. So your hands are a good measuring tool because they're equal, they're the same. So put your pinkies on both of these lines, the title line and the feet line, and then meet your index fingers and just look at the rest of your fingers and make sure they are evenly spaced so they look the same on both sides. Lift one hand and then mark that center, and then you will just do that center line. Again, make it as good as you can, but if it's not perfect, that's okay. These lines are all just guidelines, and you can always look at it and tell if you're off anyways. All right, next we're going to split the first half, the top half, into 3 sections. It should be 3 equal sections. Again, do the best you can. So what I like to do is make a couple notches first to make sure visually these are about the same. And then you can do your line across and do your other line across. And then the second half we're going to split in half. So I'm going to make another notch and do my line across. Now what I'm going to do is label off the top so that you know which section is which. The first one will be the skeleton. The second one will be add form contours. This third one is a little bit more wordy. Let me sharpen my pencil so I can write the letters nice and neat. This one is the step where you will erase skeleton. Within the form, I'm kind of shortening my words here, simplifying them. And then you will begin making the form more accurate. In other words, more detailed. It's fine if you wrote it like mine. It's okay. All right, so we are going to start on the first guy over here. I'm going to label as I go, so your first section will be labeled off so you'll know what each one is. We'll do just the skeleton here. This one you'll see we'll start building lines around it, and then this one we'll start adding details to those lines. So for the first one here, we're just drawing really loosely. So don't draw super dark, just be kind of sketchy with it. Hold your pencil lightly. So we've got the head. So of course this top line here is the top of the head. Next, we've got the neck, so just give him a little neck. And then we're going to do a shoulder line right on this line. It should be about 1 head width apart, maybe 3/4 of a head. That's usually how wide people's shoulders are. And for all the joints, so where each of the limbs bend, we're going to use circles for the joints. So this line is the shoulders. Next, we've got the upper torso. It's just kind of like a rounded off triangle type shape. We've also got the elbows here. So this line is the elbows and the waist. Now for the waist itself, you're just going to insert this little section here. And for the hips, you're going to do kind of like a little skirt type of shape. Again, you can see my lines are really sketchy, and that's fine. And then I've got my wrist joints down here. So this line is the hips and the wrist. And it's also the halfway point of the body. And we still have enough room to draw here, so don't worry about my words. Next, you're connecting all these joints, so you're putting those bones in for the limbs. And then for hands for now, we're just doing these little scoops. Now for the hips, you're going to do some circles that are a little bit bigger. For knees, kind of medium circles. And then the ankles down here, you are going to draw smaller and a little bit above that line, so it's going to float. And then connect the legs. This line is the knees. It's also the halfway point of the lower half of the body. And then the feet just kind of scoop outward. And then of course this line is the feet. So that is one finished skeleton. Now what you're going to do is repeat this guy here. So I'm gonna just kind of draw it out. I won't talk through it again. You can just kind of go back in the video and rewatch this again if you need the steps again. So I'm just drawing him out real quick again. And you'll find as you get used to this process, you might do it in different orders each time, just as long as you have the whole thing there at the end. It doesn't quite matter what order you do them in as you move down. Okay, now at this point is where you add in those form contours. So what that means is we're just building in the form of the limbs. So you're connecting your circles, your joint circles, and each one usually tapers down, which means it comes slightly wider to slightly narrower as it gets closer to that joint intersection. Don't make it too drastic though. So now you can see he's starting to look more like he has a body. So we added in these right here, and those are the form contours. Now again, we're gonna draw him again and then build details on top of those lines. Now when you get to drawing like your actual full pose or full figure, you won't do it 3 separate steps. You'll essentially do what this last one is and do all the 3 steps at once on the one figure. I'm gonna actually scooch this over so that this part's in the light and doesn't have a shadow on it. So again, I am drawing him again. This line's a little crooked, so his head might be chopped off a little bit. This one I'm taking a little bit more time on since I'm doing the finished one on this. So I'm going to build those contours around. Now on this one, we're going to kind of pretend, oops, forgot his hands, that this is kind of a final draft. So I'm actually going to draw lighter. I know last week I drew a little harder on the lines just so you could see them. But if we're going to pretend this is like a final drawing, we're drawing lightly so that all the lines that we correct are easy to erase. So I've got my form contours now applied to this, and now we're going to start adding more detail. So the head on these little figurines tends to be kind of egg-shaped a little bit, and then it kind of squares off down here like a rounded square shape. He also has the sculptedness to his face, and then his neck is a ball joint just like on all the other joints. Now we're going to give him a collarbone. So we're looking at him from slightly above angle. So we've got his collarbone here, and then his back comes behind him a little bit, and his neck sets into that top of the shoulders, so it's going to be rounded. And next I'm going to work on the arms. Now the important things about the arms is that we make sure we are making it look like each of these limb parts is kind of holding or cupping the ball joint. So it should be, it's kind of hard to show here, but the ball joint is sitting into that limb. So for this first one, this ball joint is overlapping the body a little bit. And then the arm limb cups over it, comes down, scoops over that ball joint. The ball joint is still showing, but then this lower half of the arm cups it again, comes down. Then with the wrist, again, it overlaps it. And then the hand from this one's angle just scoops down. We have this little jut out here, and then it straightens out. Now what I can do kind of along the way, or you can do it all at the end, but I'm just going to show you it now. You can clean up your section. So all those sketchy lines that are around your drawing, you can go in and clean them up. You can especially erase that skeleton line. Erase all those sketchy lines so you're just left with those nice clean outlines. Now one thing about the ball joints is at certain angles you do see kind of these indents on them, so I'm just going to add one to that one. Let me clean up the head a little bit here. Clean up the neck. The shoulder line here will no longer be here because we created the shoulders and kind of the collarbone area there. And now we're moving on to this arm. So this one comes behind the body just slightly, so I'm actually gonna kind of make this line here. And it just cuts off a little bit of that ball joint. And this one, since the arm is angled forward a little bit, actually scoops over this way rather than under. And when you get your images that you'll use for your project, you'll see that those can kind of differ depending on the angle of the one you're drawing. Now it goes this way because the arm is bending forward a little bit. This ball joint also has a little indent on it. And then it's bending a little bit back. So it's cupping that ball joint again. And then this wrist goes over the ball joint and sticks out a little bit. And it also has a little indent. Now this hand we're drawing a little bit differently. So it curves down, juts out a little bit, and then you just make this oval here because we're seeing the bottom of that hand. Now I'm gonna kind of clean up all those sketchy lines. Again, you can do this along the way or you can do it when you're all done. I kind of like to do it along the way so I have clean areas as I go. And this shoulder actually has a screw in it. So when you see the pictures of the figures, you'll see some of them have screws visible, some of them, the screw is like sticking out because some of them aren't in the best shape. I have pictures from like the last 3 years that you guys will kind of be looking at. So we've got the arms done. I believe this is where we kind of left off in class yesterday or last week. The torso here, we're just gonna kind of continue down. We are cleaning up these lines here, making them more neat. And this middle section here is a ball joint as well. It's just a lot larger, and this top half is actually overlapping it. This bottom half, similar to the arms, is cupping it. So it's holding onto it. Now when you get the pictures of the actual mannequins, you'll notice they do have this kind of little lip here or border along the edge. So I'm just gonna draw that in. And then we've got kind of this almost, I kind of call it a skirt shape, whatever you want to call it. And then it's got this, again, kind of sculpted shape right here. Now the torso here, one thing I didn't add yet, there is a sculpted shape here, and it has this little line here, and then as well as here. And now we're gonna clean up these extra lines that cut through the center. Same with here. Clean up all my lines. Now you can see I erased those ball joints for the hips because those are overlapped. So the lower hips do go over the ball joints and you won't see the entire circle. I'm just gonna erase this guy here because he's kind of messy looking. And both of these have that little indent line. Now the thighs, they cup that ball joint similar to the arms, and then they come down. The knees are overlapped by this part of the leg, so I'm gonna first curve the leg, and then you'll see just part of that knee joint. And then the bottom part of the leg also cups it and comes down. These knees also have that indent line. Now I'm going to clean up those sections before I move on to the feet. And now the bottom here cups downward. We will see just a little bit of the ankle ball joint. They both have a little indent. Now the feet on this one, since that's at a particular angle, will actually come forward a little bit. So we will see the back of the foot, and then the front kind of rounds off up here. And then this one the same. The back, kind of the heel, and then it'll come forward. And clean that up. So then you've got your finished, cleaned up form of your mannequin. So if you compare these two, you can see the big difference. This one's really flat because we don't yet have any of those detailed form lines where you can see where things are overlapping. Because if you remember when we went over the elements and principles, form can be created by overlapping. So even though I don't even have any shading on this drawing, you can already tell that this is a three-dimensional object, whereas this is just like a sketch. So that is the difference between those. Like I said, as we get into the project, you'll essentially do this process each time. You won't have to do 3 separate drawings, so just this finished one. So today, turn in your finished 3-step process image.